Hey, welcome back. You made it. Okay, so today I want to talk about an idea that can sometimes be confusing for some people, where we look at the difference between a sort of a single outcome or single event and the path that leads to that event, right? If you talk about an accident where, let's say, there's a car crash or something like that, the path to get to that outcome is just one path, okay? I like to refer to this as single path or monopath outcomes or monopath events. The other side of that coin is what I would call a multipath or polypath outcome. And if we're talking about a business situation where there's multiple users or customers affected, right? So you have, say, your NPS, right? Or your revenue number is not what you want it to be. There are several paths that lead into creating that outcome or that event, okay? So I want to just split these two out just so you have this in the back of your mind when you're going into the solution video, or even just when you're doing just your normal sort of root cause analysis, even though I don't like the term, or causal analysis, okay? There are two different ways we can get there. All right, let's have a look and see what I'm talking about. Okay, so there are really two situations, right, that when we look at causal analysis, we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with either a single path event or a multi-path event. I've heard this called single outcome events or multi-outcome events. I used to use that a little bit, but I think the term single outcome and multi-outcome assumes that there's more than one outcome, but there isn't. There's still a single outcome. So I started using the phrase single path event and multi-path event. I think that sounds better, but you may come across single outcome events or multi-outcome events. I still will use that occasionally, but very rarely. Anyway, so if that does come up, you can know that there's a couple different ways to phrase this. All right, so with a single path event, the way that you can sort of think of this is like this. You've got a situation where you've got, it's not necessarily that it's one person, but that there's one path to leading to that outcome. And so a good way to start thinking about it is, let's just assume that there's one individual affected, okay? So if we talk about, again, a car crash, right? We're talking about one individual in a car crash, okay? Now, obviously, multiple people can be affected by a single path event, but hold that in your mind for a second. With a multi-path event, okay, we're looking over here, what we're actually talking about is and again, from a business perspective, think about you've got some number of customers in a region or working with some product. And so as you travel down the path, you're going to get the split of customers as a proportion across different paths, right? So anyway, it's just a good way to frame that in your mind. If you think single path, kind of think of, look, I'm dealing with one outcome. I'm dealing with one individual mono, right? It's a single pathway. And then multipath, just think there's a whole bunch of folks that are being affected by this, okay? All right, so let's unpack this a little bit and see what I'm talking about. So if we have, just change colors here. So if we have our causal landscape diagram, right? And we're dealing with our elements. So we've created a whole bunch of elements here. And we still have our AND connection. So this will come in something like this. So this shouldn't be new to you, okay? If this is new to you and you're not familiar with anything that I'm talking about here, you can go back and check some of those other videos where I explain all of this stuff, okay? But for those of you guys that are following along and gals, and you've been watching, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So in a single path event, we have a situation where the top level effect is caused by some lower level objects and interactions with other objects, right? So we call those elements, and there's a function in there. All right. Now, the situation is something like this. We have these OR connections, and what the OR connection is telling us is that this effect, whatever this effect is, if it's a car crash, is, although it could be caused by multiple elements and multiple paths leading to that element. In this car crash, at this time, there was only one path that got us there. All right. So if you think about it like this, I'll just trace this one out for a second. So we'll say this is our current path, all right? And the other path then, while it's a path, it's not firing. All right. So let me explain what I mean here. In this case, let's say the car crash. Let's just look at what's happening. So if I'm a driver in a car and I'm driving down the road, and let's say I fell asleep and there is no other car, no other vehicle, nothing else on the road, then you can say something like, driver maybe fell asleep, something like that. Okay. Of course, we wouldn't have a P in there. We'd have something like that. I probably didn't spell that right, but okay. So we have something like, okay, the driver fell asleep, right? And that's leading to this path where we have this car crash. On the other side, we might have a situation where let's say it's let's call it an oncoming, okay? Call it an oncoming driver. And let me just move this up a little bit so you can see. So an oncoming driver, let's say swerves. Oops. Swerves. So oncoming driver swerves. Let's just say swerves. It'd be something like within the lane, but let's say swerves into our lane. Okay. Now, in the case of us doing the analysis on this, single path event, it's either going to be one or the other, right? I mean, obviously you can get there both ways, but what I'm saying is in this scenario, if you fell asleep and that is the cause, or the driver falls asleep and that is the cause of the accident, then while this can create an accident, this path over here, while this can create an accident, it's not the path that we take to understand the cause and effect relationship that's contributing to this top level effect. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the question is, do we still identify all of the attributes and the objects and the functions? Do we still identify all that? Yes, of course we do. Right? Because when we're doing our investigation, we're trying to understand what actually caused this effect, we need to know, right? We need to know what the possible avenues are, right? So especially in some cases, you have to infer this, all right? But anyway, single path event assumes that we go down one path and only one path, and in our case, it's this one right here, and it leads through this path and creates this top level effect. All right, now, if we contrast this with a multi-path event, let me just move this over and make a little space for us. Of course, I've got a couple things here. Let's consolidate that layer. So let me grab this. Oops. All right. All right. So in the case of this multi-path event, what's going on here? Now, again, let's take another example. Let's say we have a situation where we've got an NPS value that we are not happy with. So let's say the NPS is minus 27. Okay. Now that's our top level effect. All right. Well, that may not be the top level, maybe mid-level, but it's a top level effect for us right now. Now the question is, what's happening? What's creating that top level effect? In this case, right, the NPS being minus 27, we're not talking about one customer here. Maybe in this case we have 100 customers. Okay, so we have 100 of these folks, and they are all scoring us on some service. And this person's arm needs to be really long and or detached. All right, and their legs are wonky as well. So anyway, we've got 100 customers, right? In that case, what we have is we still have all of our AND connections. So we'll draw those in here. And again, if you don't understand how the AND connections work, go ahead and have a look at the video where we kind of go through and explain all this. But now, to get to this situation here, where the score is X, the score is whatever, those 100 customers, when we look at the cause the cause and effect relationships that come together and the interrelation of those causes to create this effect, what we'll find is that some number of customers may go down one path and some may go down another. So what we actually might find is something like, say, 25 people, right, go down this path, and 75 people go down this path. And this is really, really critical. And again, I've talked about this when I talk about these conditional statements, right, and the importance of understanding where the OR relationships are, okay? Because remember, either one of these paths can create this top level effect. It can create this outcome. So when we're solving for this, we actually have to solve for both sides, okay? So in this situation, maybe you have a touch point NPS. Oops. Just put touch point. And this touch point NPS, oops. And this touch point NPS looks at like the delivery driver customer handoff or something like that, right? And actually, let's not do touch point. Let's do episode NPS. Oops. Let's do episode, okay? So within this episode, okay, you can have a situation where maybe over here you have a delivery, which is one touch point within that episode, and then over here maybe you can have the shopping cart or the checkout or something. Or actually, let's call it notification, and the notification can affect your NPS. So in this case, on the left side, you know, those 25 folks may have a great experience with the notification and the UI and all that stuff, but they may just find that the delivery experience is suboptimal for some number of reasons, right? It's not on time. They don't like the window. They don't like the day. They don't like the security process. They don't like whatever. Okay? So it affects these 25 people. And these 25 people score the NPS as a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or whatever. And then you get some number of people over here that are scoring the relationship poorly because of the fact that they weren't notified, or the notification came on the wrong device, or it didn't come soon enough, or whatever the case is, right? But the point is, if we look at an episode NPS of, say, minus 27, we can get there a whole lot of different ways, okay? And those are OR relationships. There are some and, yes, but right now we're talking about OR relationships. So the thing I want to point out is when you get into the Big Boss Round Challenge, the Big Boss Round Challenge is a single event. It is a single path event, right? There is one sagging ceiling, okay? There is one situation with the joist. There's one customer that we're talking about here. There might be multiple customers who've experienced the same thing, but we're not solving for those folks. We're solving for this specific situation, okay? Now in later videos, we'll have a look at multi-path events where I'll take you into a transactional challenge. And in that transactional challenge, we'll have some people that are affected one way and some people that are affected another way, okay? Anyway, but the point is, I thought I should make this clear because if you haven't come across this, or you were getting hung up on this, this should help explain it to you. And remember again that depending upon, let me just zoom out a little bit, depending upon what your business is, what you're doing, if you're doing accident investigations, if you're doing fault analysis on a vehicle or a piece of machinery or something that's singular, right, you're going to be spending a lot of time over here, all right? Especially if you're doing any kind of accident investigation. Now, if you're in the business world and you're looking at transactional environments, you're looking at a product, a service, and you're wanting to know what's going on with that, you're going to be over here in the multi-path event, okay? Anyway, look, I hope this helps. And, you know, if you get stuck, put it in the comments, ask questions. I'm happy to answer your questions and get you through this. Otherwise, good luck, keep innovating, and we'll see you soon.